and welcome to another episode of You Thought It?
We Said It.
My name is Lisa Marie,
I'm Zeta.
May Denise.
and today we're going to be talking about Zeta.
Should Mr. Biden be allowed to run for president again, specifically based on his age and capacity?
I feel like this is so direct.
I'm direct.
Yes. How about the other way you worded it earlier?
I said, should a person be limited to perform certain positions, whether it be presidency, leadership roles, CEO, driving on the road, pastorship, bishop, and all of these leadership capacities, should they be able to after a certain age? Husband, wife, Just kidding. Not kidding.
After a certain age. And Denise, you said something really interesting.
I don't think it has to do with age. I think it's more about the mental capacity of the person, right? Because Zeta brought it to our attention again. Joyce Myers just turned 80 years old, and she looks phenomenal.
Go,
I think she
Joyce.
looks so good.
Happy birthday.
But I have plenty of people that I know that are 80 and don't look half as good, and their mind is not all there.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's a question of the age. I think it's a question of mental capacity. And there should be some kind of testing maybe to see where they are, to see if they should continue to run. Like give them a memory test.
A speech test.
You know what truly like gets me about poor Joe, sleepy Joe. What really gets me is, they're using him as face, right? You don't see him talk, at least not as much as, for example, Trump. You don't see him giving speeches. You don't see him showing face at certain places and speaking on certain. At least I haven't seen him. You know what I'm saying?
Speaking on his behalf.
I was gonna say I've seen him giving speeches.
But they're not very coherent.
And he can't read them.
Right, but like
and
that's
he mumbles and stumbles.
But that's my thing though. Like they're using him as face, as like to show face for what their political agenda is behind the scenes. So he's just like
so
a
he's
cover
like a puppet.
Right. Because I mean, who's the other person?
So he's being taken advantage of.
It's almost abuse.
Did you see a clip that he actually said something like, my boss, or I work for Kamala?
Kamala.
You guys didn't see that?
I didn't
And
see
he
that
called
one.
her almost his boss.
He said, yeah.
But then the funny thing is that I haven't seen her doing. I
Either.
mean, have
She
you?
don't come out for nothing.
She doesn't say anything either.
So then, like, who's our president?
Yeah, voted for him.
The hidden agenda.
Who voted? Well, we don't know who voted for Biden. But
It wasn't me, though.
But who you're gonna vote for now? That you guys know, it's really, it shouldn't be a question of Democrat or Republican. It should really be a question of who's gonna be able to run this country the best way. And I feel like everybody voted for Biden just to not vote for Trump.
And that was bad. That was a bad decision.
And you guys see where we are. And I felt bad for him. He fell recently, and I almost cried because it was heartbreaking to see this old man who can barely speak, barely put a sentence together, and then fall in front of all those people on national TV and just get criticized and judged the way he is. He should be able to live his last days in peace.
Oh, wow.
So should they be given a cognitive test?
I think
Yeah.
they should be given more than a cognitive test. I think they should be giving a physical mobility test, a speech test, a cognitive test, emotional test, all types of tests. I think that once you get to running a country is not like, washing dishes. It's not like, I'm not even going to say riding a bike, because you require some level of being able to move around and do things. I think that coordination is the word, right? It's not like washing the dishes. It's not like washing clothes. It's not like, sweeping the floor. It requires a lot of work mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And I feel like after you hit a certain age, like the stress of it all, it's going to really wear you out. Like, and you're not dealing with one or two people that you're leading. You're leading millions and millions of people. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody has an agenda. Everybody has something that they want to criticize and they want to say. And, I haven't, like you guys said, I haven't heard a lot of his speeches, but the ones that I have heard, they make no sense. And it's just sad. Like you said, Lisa, to me, it feels a little bit like kind of like an abusive situation where they're taking advantage of him, and he is literally like a puppet. Like there's just such an agenda being pushed behind him that nobody really cares about his well-being. Nobody really cares about what he can and isn't capable of doing. And it's just it says a lot about us as a people as well. And I don't think it has to do with age either. I think it has to do with where you're at. There's people that are 35 that can't do what he does, you know?
That's very true.
I think they should also be given a test to make sure they know their laws. You guys remember when Trump started it as president? I mean, I think presidency is such an important role, obviously, to govern our nation.
Well, he didn't have any political
and
background.
he knew nothing. He knew nothing about politics. Arnold Schwarzenegger, right?
Schwarzenegger.
I love how she says his name. It's
I've
been
always said it.
forever.
I've always said it bad. And I thought about it. I was like, I know I'm going to butcher his name. Yeah, I knew it. So he ran. He didn't know anything either. And I take a test. So I work in finance, and I have to take multiple tests before I'm able to even sit with a client to talk about certain things. And so I have all these regulations. One test is 6 hours. The other one is, 3. I have to recertify every year. And you're telling me that I could just wake up tomorrow and decide to run for presidency and nobody's going to check my credentials and what I know about
Law.
the politics? I
Yeah.
think that's crazy.
So for those of you who don't know what cognitive testing is, Google is our friend. And Google says cognitive testing checks for problems with certain brain functions called cognition. Cognition includes thinking, learning, remembering, and using judgment and language. Problems with cognition are called cognitive impairment. Okay, we're up our alley. There are many different cognitive tests that check for cognitive impairment. Now, my question is this. If the president would have to take a cognitive test because they are in a place of leadership that would benefit the greater good of the people, should leaders in the church also, maybe pastors specifically, be required to take cognitive tests?
I think
I love
anybody
going
in
to
a
this.
leadership position needs to be able to execute certain functions. You can't, and even biblically, right? After a certain amount of time in the Old Testament, the leaders were required to retire. Like, you had to retire after a certain age. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. God instituted it that way. And I feel like, okay, granted, now people are living longer, not longer than they did in the Bible, but in this day and age, our life expectancy, the 60, the 40 is the new 30, 50 is the new 40, 60 is the new 50. Like, you have a lot of 40-year-olds. I saw a meme not too long ago about what 40-year-olds looked like back in the day, and it was incredible because they really look like they were 75. And that was 40-year-olds, right? And so now we have 40-year-olds that look like they're 20. And I think that
We love that for us.
I think that even if after a certain age you are able to perform all these functions, I think the reality is that even if you're 75, you got to know that you're 75. You're not 25 anymore. So I think there should come a certain time where, yes, maybe because of age, even if you want to function in the same thing, maybe you should tone it back a little bit, or maybe you should
Delegate some of that
start to delegate,
yeah, right.
so that one, you could be at peace more, right? Because in your age, that's your right. And two, you can start opening the path for somebody else to take over.
I was going to say, you have to create disciples. You have to create people that are going to be able to take on the reign after you can't anymore.
And I think that's a lot of leaders, not just, well, our government, we have a checks and balance system where it's like nobody could be there for too long, right? They kick you out, you gotta go. And in churches, I feel like a lot of times, sometimes people feel like they want to stay. They feel like only they could do the job, and it's like, no, you gotta let it go. You gotta let it go.
Right.
So yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, so we're talking about we were talking about how they need to create leaders, right? Disciples for the future generations. And a lot of these leaders just don't think that anybody can do it better than them. And it's like, okay, maybe somebody's not going to do it exactly like you, and they don't have to do it exactly like you, but you can't have that mentality that you're going to be here forever, because you're not. So you have to really create leaders and delegate responsibilities so that somebody can continue the legacy, right?
Right.
I think any good business and mature owner of any business or of any leader knows that they have to prepare someone to leave the legacy too, right? And when I say legacy, I'm talking about a business. But realistically, in church, you have to want to create someone or to develop someone who's going to be able to take over once you do die unexpectedly, because our time here is not guaranteed. But you want someone who's going to be able to take over your flock. Right. And that's something that should come almost naturally. It should be, preparing for your next step in life, right? because you care about your people and you want them to be well taken care of. You know how irresponsible it is for you not to have someone next in line and something happen to you and your people are not prepared? You don't have someone to take over your business. It's irresponsible. It's not just, bad. It's actually really irresponsible.
This paves the way for a lot of different topics, I think, because then you have, the situation of right now we're talking about whether or not they should be allowed to, whether Biden should continue running for president, and whether after a certain age, pastors should be pastors or leaders should be forced into retirement, right? And then you also have the issue of whether they should even be allowed to run for as long as they run, right?
So there be terms.
Yeah,
for pastors.
I mean, not for pastors, but for leaders in general, right? Even biblically, in the New Testament, right? When they needed people to do things, the commandment pretty much was find yourself somebody full of the Spirit of God. Alguien que esté lleno del Espíritu. Find yourself men that are filled with the Spirit of God, that give fruit, that give testimony. Anoint them, lay your hands on them, and put them to work, right? It was an issue like people were able, you have to recognize when it's just too much for you, when the job is too big, right? Even Moses, he was like, I can't do this anymore. And God told him, find yourself leaders, find yourself people to be on top of people to be, and then they started creating subdivisions. And I was talking about this with my husband the other day, how, the company that I work for and that you work for, and even in schools, you have districts, right? You have schools, you have a principal, you have an assistant principal, and then you have a superintendent, or you have a district manager who oversees 5 or 6 or 7, 8 different schools or businesses, right? And those people report to another manager, and then they report to the CEO. And I think the same thing, it should, churches, that comes from a biblical perspective. You need people to help you carry the job forward. One person alone, that's why you have burnout inside the churches. That's why you have so much dysfunction inside of a lot of businesses. And how you run your home, that's how you're going to run your business. So that all comes from how you run your home. But again, that's another topic.
I was going to say, we took it real left. We went to a whole different direction.
It's a lot to leadership.
So Moses did have people that he put in charge to deal with the small situations, right? And whatever they couldn't handle, then it was brought to the next person and so forth.
Right.
And so as you grow, because maybe in the beginning you can handle it, and you'll even say this with a sole business owner. In the beginning, you can handle it because you don't have that much work.
10 people.
But as God is blessing you and as you're growing, están ensanchando. My wording today is off. My pronunciation today is off. But anyways, as you're growing, then you have to know to delegate. You have to know when you need help. And it does come from a control issue where you don't want to ask for help, or you don't want to.
Pride.
It's pride, right? And it's this ego thing where I can do it. And it's dangerous.
I'm thinking of the checks and balances. I'm thinking of, the people helping you. And I'm wondering in my head, of course, we have independent churches, and then we have churches and councils. And I think that we see more of that structure in councils. And as I almost ask myself, should we be encouraging independent churches to become a part of a council? I know a lot of people are so against it, but if it allows that structure and it allows that delegation, why not?
I think want to keep opening.
I'm like, this is a whole nother podcast topic.
How you want me to get into this?
I think that this is a good topic to have, but I think a lot of the reason why these independent churches are independent is because they don't want that accountability. They don't want that structure, and they don't want anybody telling them what to do, or they feel like, they got the divine revelation from God where God is telling them to go left because they're no longer in agreement with the way things are going. And this is a big reason why a lot of these churches go that way.
I want to add that is those same churches that came out of a concilio, okay, who were in one, who leave one to then run their own church, to then become a concilio and criticize and condemn those who leave and don't go under their concilio.
Yeah.
It's the craziest thing.
But that's what it's all about.
Después quieren criticar a todo lo que se le van así. And I've seen it in so many churches.
But there's a lot of independent churches doing that, and the whole thing is that they don't want anybody to hold them accountable, right? They want to do what they do, and a lot of them, it's a very touchy topic because they bring God into it and they say, God told me that I shouldn't be a part, that I should do this on my own. And maybe some of them, yes, God has called them to start their own councils for whatever reason. But I don't feel like that's the case for everybody, right?
But even if it is, if you left and God blessed you, then let the other person be blessed and bless him and don't condemn him. Right. Let him do what he's gonna do, because maybe God does want him on his own, like God wanted you on your own. Then let them go. Let my people
go.
Yes. Let's go back to that cognitive testing. What are some questions
that we would ask
that would go on a cognitive test? Weren't you looking at some earlier?
Yeah, but that was not a cognitive test. That had to be like a math test or something. And like, let's be realistic. Half of the people I know would, I would probably fail the math test.
No, you wouldn't, Zayda.
No, I wouldn't. But maybe if I didn't have a calculator, I might.
You would have to think.
A lot.
And that's okay.
Thinking is hard sometimes.
That's okay. No.
Some of the questions, I think that, they want to know if you know where you're at, right? Your space and time, if you're here in the present, if you know your material, if you know exactly what it is that you study for. Because like I always say, right? And this is secular, and I apply it to the spiritual as well. If my back is hurting, I'm not going to go to an allergist. If my back is hurting, I'm not going to go to an eye doctor. I'm going to go to a doctor that has to do with an orthopedist, that has to do with bones, that has to do with back. If my stomach is hurting, I'm gonna go to a gastro doctor. I'm not gonna go to an eye doctor. Like, and the same thing inside the churches, right? If you need a word from God, I'm not gonna go to the even though God can use anybody when He wants to. But if you know that God uses somebody in the prophetic, you're not gonna go and ask for a word from the one who who's a cook, right? Or who cleans, or So I feel like if you're in a leadership position, one, you should be able to show that you have that concentration, that knowledge, that foundation, in that field, right? The problem with a lot of people nowadays is like, oh, God called me to be and I was talking about this with my husband today too. God called me to be a minister. God called me into ministry, so that's why I can't work. But meanwhile, they don't even know 2 Bible verses. Meanwhile, they've never, they don't have no agenda. They don't have nobody that's inviting them out to preach, but they don't want to work and they don't want to do anything because God called them into ministry. No, ponte a estudiar. Go study, go work, go develop yourself in whatever it is that you say, that you think, that you know that God has called you to do. Yes. And make that grow, right? In the meantime, until your agenda is full, until people start calling you, until you know what you're talking about, how you want to be a preacher, a pastor, a missionary, and you don't know the first thing about dealing with people, and you don't know the first thing about the Bible, about the foundation, about how to minister to people, can't go to Africa and talk about bread when they never seen bread. You know what I'm saying? And so the same thing with leadership.
Every podcast topic here today.
I think the same thing with leadership. Like if you're gonna talk about a cognitive test for an older person or for somebody who just doesn't seem like they're there, you want to know that they're able.
Amen. That they know their doctrine, specifically in the church.
Oh God, you know how many people don't know. You know how many people don't know. I'm gonna behave myself.
That's another topic.
That's another topic.
That's so intangible, right?
What our doctrine is. They don't know our doctrine.
They still think doctrine is what the rules of the church are. Do I have to wear a dress that's to the floor to my ankle? Like that's not doctrine.
Doctrine is wearing Nikes instead of Pumas.
Don't shave that beard.
Comportate.
I mean, shave that beard. Sorry, that was the opposite.
Don't shave your legs.
Don't shave your armpits.
Or your mustache, if you're a girl.
So I guess my other question is...
topic. You guys really are going...
Voy a comenzar. No, porque ahora, aside from cognitive, right? Do you think that aside from cognitive, do you think another thing that hinders people is their gender biases?
Elaborate.
Hinders them from what?
I know.
From fully participating in leadership.
Oh, that's another topic.
Oh, that's gender roles. Wait, that's the next topic.
We got a whole topic for that.
We'll be back for that.
Depends where you are. Okay, we'll come back to you.
I know y'all want to hear that one.
Yeah.
It's spicy.
So who are you voting for? Ask yourself these questions.
Do some research. Before Biden has been in office for years. I mean, he's been part of a political party and he's been in politics almost all his life. And everybody voted for him without knowing anything that he's done for this country.
His opinion has changed a lot. On a lot of different things throughout the years as well.
Yeah, it goes with the flow.
So don't go with
the
flow.
Do your research.
Yep. So that was fun.
Yeah.
Amen. This was fun. We have a lot of topics to cover, so.
Don't miss our next one. It'll be out in 2 weeks. Bye, guys.
Bye.
You thought it.
We said it.